CNN.
Radio.
Army Specialist Terry Holbrooks came to Guantanamo Bay Detention Center an angry, nearly atheistic 19-year-old military police guard and left about a month later a Muslim. His journey of conversion began with an observation.
One of the things that kind of amazed me about Guantanamo was that the detainees could wake up each day and smile.
Terry Holbrooks was a member of the 463rd Military Police Company when he came to Gitmo in 2003. The Army, he says, had instilled fear about the detainees, and he says he was worried at first.
I'm expecting Lawrence of Arabia. I'm expecting prolific men with giant beards and huge swords, I'm worried. I'm expecting Anthony Quinn.
75 men have I killed with my own hands in battle. I scatter, I burn my enemies' tents. I take away their flocks and herds.
But instead, he says, the detainees seemed to him human and almost happy. During the long and boring hours of guarding, he'd hear them tell jokes to each other, laugh, keep each other motivated, and they'd pray 5 times a day.
So I decided, I'm gonna ask the question, how can you guys believe that there's a God? How can you believe that there's a God? How can you believe that he cares about you? You have no freedom. You have no rights. You don't know if you're ever going to go home, but you can wake up and happy and then smile each day and you still pray. How can you do this?
About 25 of the men, he says, spoke English. They told him they believed it was God testing their will, testing their strength. So they needed to pray to keep each other's spirits up. Holbrooks says this intrigued him even more.
If you guys can be happy and wake up and smile each day in a place like this, and I have all the freedoms in the world and I'm miserable, obviously there's something more to Islam than what I've been told, which was nothing.
At the time, Gitmo held 778 detainees guarded by MPs. During the uneventful hours, Holbrooks discovered that no one really cared that he was talking to and with the detainees.
I suppose if my unit had been a little bit more diligent in their duties, they probably would have seen to it that I wasn't talking with detainees for hours on end. But they kind of looked at Guantanamo as more of a vacation. It's beachfront property, and you're working 3 days a week, so spend a lot of time drinking and going and hanging out in the sun, and then when it's time to work, you just go and sit in the air-conditioned shack, and you let the lowest-ranking individual do all the work, which was me. I didn't mind it. It gave me plenty of time to have good conversation and then to speak with detainees and ask them questions.
He became particularly close with detainee number 590, a Moroccan named Ahmed Irashidi. I've had email conversations with Irashidi, who is now back in Morocco. He wrote that he remembers his time with the guard. Holbrooks says he'd sit cross-legged for hours across the bars from Irashidi and ask question after question.
He kind of grew tired of answering my questions at one point. He gave me the Quran and then told me to take the Quran home and read it.
He says it was an easy read for him. He began to change his lifestyle. He stopped smoking and drinking, eliminated pork from his diet, and began taking better care of himself. And after about 3 months, he told Irashidi that he wanted to become a Muslim. But Holbrooks said Irashidi almost tried to talk him out of it.
And he says to me, you understand that if you become a Muslim, your unit's going to look at you differently, your family, your country. Everybody that you've known in your life is going to look at you differently if you decide that you want to be a Muslim. You understand your country is going to look at you in a way that isn't going to be good. It's going to make things difficult for you.
Holbrooks says that didn't matter. He found something he believed in that made him happy and gave him a better understanding of how human beings should treat each other.
Trying not to think negative about people when you first meet them, trying to give them the defense, give them the benefit of the doubt. Basically like we would try to hope and strive for in America, innocent until proven guilty. It's something that's very important in Islam. Until you can prove that somebody is guilty, they is innocent. So give them the benefit of the doubt.
Now forget what he thought of the conditions at Gitmo or to what detainees were subjected to each day. While he does speak out against all that, this moment wasn't about that. It was about him. He repeated his request to Irashidi that he wanted to become a Muslim.
I was thinking to myself, at the age of 19, I finally felt like my life was going somewhere. I had purpose and direction now.
Irashidi woke up the detainee in the cell next to him.
I'm not fluent in Arabic, but I imagine the conversation that took place was, this guard would like to say a shahada, would you wake up and please be a witness?
A shahada is a one-line statement of faith that is the single requirement for converting to Islam. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the prophet. And that was it. Holbrooks was now a Muslim. Holbrook says most of the men in his unit were fine with his conversion. His superiors, however, were not. He says there were some physical altercations and empty threats of trading in his uniform for an orange jumpsuit like the detainees wore, but nothing came of it. He left the military in 2005 and now works for a nonprofit charity. He says, and Islam teaches, that you should be tolerant. And that's his message.
Religion should be a personal thing, and it should help strengthen you, and it should help strengthen the community, and it should help strengthen the family. You know, these core things, we see them in all of the faiths. Jesus said the same thing as Moses and Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac, and Prophet Muhammad said the same thing as all of them. They all said the same thing: be excellent to each other.
As for Ahmed Irashidi, the detainee who gave Holbrooks the Quran, he spent 5.5 years at Gitmo before being released in 2007. He was never charged with a crime. He wrote a book titled The General, the ordinary man who challenged Guantanamo. It was just published last month. There are still 166 detainees at Gitmo today. About half are stuck. They're cleared by the U.S. government, but their home countries don't want them back. Jim Roop, CNN.